want to do another short review of some games here. These are kind of weird because I didn't know very many of them, and I don't know, maybe some of them were only released in Japan. I only remember playing one of them as a kid, so I'm going to go through them and tell you what they say about them, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about them and how they are. The first one is called Atlantis no Nazo, or maybe it's no Nazo. It's kind of a platformer like Mario, different games like that. You play as a archaeologist, and the only weapon that you have is sticks of dynamite that bounces around and they explode after a couple of seconds. So you have to really figure out, how it's going to be, if it's going to be able to hit the enemy or not. There's also a timer on the bottom of the screen that goes extremely fast. What I got out of it is you're supposed to do as much on the screen as you can and get to the door to finish the round that you are on before the timer runs out. Of course, if you hit an enemy, if you touch an enemy, or if you don't get to there at the end at the time, you die. The control on this game is very loose, very slippery, if you will. It's really hard to control the character, and the only way that you can make a jump that's like toward, forward or backward, is if you are already moving that way. If you stop and you jump, or you try to jump forward after you stop, you're not going to jump very far forward. So, keep that in mind as you're jumping over gaps that are on the game. This game may be good. I'm not really 100% sure. The couple times I've played it, I've tried to pick up as much as I can on it, and it's the jumping and things like that, the mechanics of that and things like that are just it's just too much for me to try to do. So I'm not going to do a playthrough. Speaking of, well, I'll tell you at the end of the video here, or toward the end of the video. I don't like the game. That being said, I don't think it's not that it's not playable. It's that it would be a challenging playthrough if somebody wanted to do it, and it would be fairly challenging. I'm not going to, as I've said before on some of these other games, I'm not going to beat my brain into the wall trying to finish, something that may take a while. I've got other projects. Like I said, I just want to show you guys some of these games. It was made by Sunsoft, so you would think it would be a good game, but obviously most of it's in Japanese, so I guess it didn't reach our shores. I don't remember it anyway. Attack Animal Gakuen, I think, is the second one that I played. If you played Space Harrier on the Genesis, or even 3D World Runner on the Nintendo, I did a video with that on it. If you've played either of the games, it's more like Space Harrier, but it's pretty similar to both ones. It's just on Space Harrier, what it is you go through these stages, and you're flying in the air, and there are things below you and things above you, and as you go, you're free to move around the room. You're looking at the persons from behind them. So it's a different thought process, and it's a different idea on how the game is. So that's how Space Harrier is, and then you shoot the enemies, and you can move all over the place as you're shooting enemies. It's more like that, except for they replaced the main character with I guess she's supposed to be like a schoolgirl character, and she shoots enemies that are more. They are describing them as cute and furry animals. There were kangaroos, cactus, turtles, and flies, and they have an end of level boss. It says on here that they have an end of level boss. I made it to the first level boss, and it is a koala that looks like it's part of the mafia. So, I just kind of spun around the room while shooting at him, and that's really the only way I could get through there and to the next zone. Again, this one, I don't believe it made it to. I don't believe it made it to our shores over here. I believe what we got instead was Space Harrier, which is decidedly a better game and translates better over here than if they would have released this. If they would have released this, we would have been wondering what their thought process was, I'm sure. Okay, next one I want to talk about is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Back in, I believe it was the early 90s, there used to be, I think it was Fox that carried it. Fox used to have a, Saturday mornings, they'd have a lot of different shows. They'd have a lot of different cartoons. They'd have Goosebumps, they'd have X-Men, Spider-Man, The Tick, Eek the Cat. Every so often they change some of these shows or they change their slots up. The only one that really stayed where it was until the Saturday morning went off was the X-Men. I believe it was the same time every Saturday morning, and it was like a kind of like a saga. But I think it stayed in the same time slot, and it was the only one that stayed there the whole time. Power Rangers were also added into this and things like that. But there was another show that was kind of obscure. It didn't last real long, and it was called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. I don't really remember too much of the plot. I think like the Killer Tomatoes were kind of like a zombie type thing where they tried to bite people and maybe transform them into tomatoes. Like I said, if anybody remembers the show and if I'm saying it wrong, please let me know, because I watched it a few times and I even remember the theme song, but I do not for the life of me really remember the show that well. And the game is no different. I played it probably whenever I was a kid, and I don't remember much about it. What you're supposed to do is go through and jump on the tomatoes, and you're supposed to defeat the bosses. I don't think it's a very long game. I think it's only like 4 or 5 stages long. The jump mechanic, though, is something that you have to get down. You have to get down that jump mechanic, and it's very, very difficult to do. I don't like this game very well. I think that it's they could have done more with it. I do not like it. I don't think it's that good. This show was okay, but I mean it wasn't really, I didn't think it was really that good either. And it kind of was kind of funny because the place that it took place in was called San Zucchini, which is really weird. But the main bad guy is named Dr. Putrid T. Gangrene, and he's going to unleash a doomsday tomato, and all the citizens of San Zucchini are terrified of the fanged vegetables coming from the sewers. So you got the only one that they'll take him on, and he sent his special tomato squad, which is like his special squad: Zoltan, Beefsteak, Mamato, Fang, Ketchup, and Tomato to stop you. Or, not Tomato, Tomacho to stop you. So, a lot of the stuff is based upon food, based upon tomatoes. It was an interesting experiment. The game and the show. Not so much... like I said, I don't remember too much about the show, so I guess I didn't care too much for the show. Didn't really care too much for the game. Didn't really care for either of them. Didn't really like either of them. Attack Animal Gakuen that I had just talked about a little while ago, it's okay, but I would rather play Space Harrier. And that's just my thought process. I mean, that would just be something I'd play Space Harrier before I play that. Last game I played is Aussie Rules Footy, is what it is labeled as. Basically, this is a simulation of Australian football, also known as rugby. I think it's more so rugby here. We're not too much into that here in the States. If you would need instructions on rugby, you may either have to look them up. I don't really know how to play the game. I don't know what the buttons really do because it kept switching my characters and I kept pressing different buttons. I know that you need to kick the ball through like the little pegs at the end to get some points. That's how the other team was scoring points. It's just one of those things that does not translate well here unless you're really into rugby. Like, I can go on and I can tell you about hockey, basketball, football, baseball, things like that here in the States. And even, soccer, tennis, and golf. I can tell you different stuff about it here in the States. But if you have... Rugby is not big in the States. Here in the United States, rugby is not a big thing. It's a big thing in places like there's a couple of countries over in Europe that play it, and I believe there's some in Australia that play it, and it's a big deal over there. Our big deal over here is football in the United States. Basically, it's football. There will be those that argue with me that baseball is the thing, but or that maybe even that basketball is the thing, but football is the thing over here, and it's just a simulation of rugby. If I knew what the buttons would do, would I like it better? Probably not. Probably not. If you like rugby and you understand rugby and you want to get and you take the time to get the buttons down, I'm sure it's a pretty good game. Not for me though, just not for me. I mean, I've tried to watch them play rugby before, and I don't know everything about it, and I'm not going to tell you I do because I honestly do not know everything about it. So you'd have to ask somebody that knows more about rugby than what I do. And it's just, but that's what it is it's a rugby simulator. I didn't care for it, but, other people may. So, there's that one. Also, what I want to chime in on is I did a video of the, I don't know how to say the name of the game. Astyanax or whatever it is. I did a short playthrough of it because I found a code that was for basically invincibility. So I was able to go back and play through the game. I tried to go back and play through Astrofang. The only code I could find, though, was a stage select code. And there was supposed to be one that gave you infinite fuel, but I never did get it to work. So I wasn't going to go back through that again. I found some codes for some of these games that I had just played, but any game that requires two controllers to put in the code, more than likely I'm not going to do it. Plus, two of these games, I don't even think they even got released out of Japan. I'm not even sure if the Aussie Rules one got released here in the States. I'm not sure that it did, because I don't remember seeing them. The only one I remember seeing is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So some of these games, if I don't if I didn't see them here in the States, and I don't think that they're going to be a big time playthrough for you guys, I'm not going to sit here and do them. Because some of them are just like coming up. There's one that's called Babel. Babel is a puzzle game. I don't remember it ever being released on our here in the States. Another game coming up, Back to the Future and Back to the Future Part 2 and 3. Those were both released here in the States. They were both released here. Am I going to do a playthrough of them? No. I doubt it. Because they're both made by LJN. And LJN games, besides maybe just a few of them, are just the controls and the way that the games play sometimes are just mind-boggling. They are just mind-boggling. How these games somehow made it past like a quality control thing is beyond my comprehension. Now, like I said, there's a couple of them that are good. These two are not that good. There's some other ones though, like Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo, and some other ones that are like wrestling games, and also there's Friday the 13th, which is awful. There's Nightmare on Elm Street, which I've already went over. It's not a terrible game. There are parts of it that are kind of rough to get through, but it's not to say that it's not playable and that it can't be beat, because it can. But like these Back to the Future, I remember playing them when I was a kid, and I didn't do very well at either one of them. I'll get as far as I can, but I didn't do very well at either one of them, or get all the way to the end. I will definitely be looking for codes, but the next short video probably that we'll do will probably be Auto Upturn B-Wings, which is also known as Battle Wings, and the Babel game I was talking about. And we'll probably do those next time that we do one of these videos. I'm going to try to finish Final Fantasy 1 and maybe start on number 2. I finished the Water Temple last night on Final Fantasy 1, which means all I have left is the Air Temple. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the Air Temple, beat the last fiend there, and then before I go to the last area to beat the game, I think I may go through, I'll at least go through 2 of the extra dungeons that are on that game, to kind of power up a little bit and get some weapons that are in there. I may go through all 4 of them. I may. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to or not. So there will definitely be 2 to 3 more parts to that. There may end up being 4 parts to that, because I may decide to do 2 of the dungeons on one playthrough and 2 of the dungeons on the other. We'll see if we can get that done. I'd like to show you guys the extra dungeons that they put on there. They're not necessary to beat the game, and I could beat the game where I'm at right now, but I would want to level up. I would want to level up just enough to have enough magic points and hit points to be able to stand up to all the bosses in the Chaos Shrine plus Chaos himself. I don't want to make it just so easy that it's just ridiculous, but at the same point, I don't want to make it to where I'm not sure what to do and I get trapped in a bad situation. So, but until next time, we will see you then.